Last year, I sat in a carol service, as I have done basically every year of my life, and listened to the story of the Nativity. And for the first time, I thought, oh, this story doesn't mean anything to me anymore. And I want to talk about that. I grew up Catholic, so like many people, I grew up with two competing myths at Christmas time. On one hand, we had Santa Claus flying through the sky and bringing presents to all of the children of the world, and all of the excitement and anticipation and tangible reality of the appearing presents that meant. And then there was the other side of Christmas, the religious side of Christmas, the real reason for the season, the birth of Jesus. Theologian James Fowler writes that there are 5 stages of faith that we move through as we progress through our lives. It starts as a kind of undifferentiated trust in the people around us, and then evolves through infancy to engagement in our religious traditions. And then when we are ages 6 to 12, it shifts into stage 2, this mythic, literal stage of faith. This is the stage of faith that I think so many of us remember from childhood when we think back to our belief in Santa Claus. We really believed that there was this mythical person who was going to come into our house and was going to make Christmas happen. And when I think back to my religious faith of a similar age, it was similarly literal. All of the characters in the Bible that I was being told about, these were true stories. All of the ideas that I was being handed down as part of my religion, I was interpreting them literally. It's an age where we're not quite capable of abstract thought yet. Metaphor hasn't quite entered the picture, and we are taking things that we are passed down and interpreting them as literal. What's interesting about the two myths of Christmas is how different they are treated culturally. One is a game of make-believe that adults play with the children in their lives, and the other is a strongly held, respected religious belief. One holds a claim to truth, while the other holds a claim to fun and whimsy and fiction. I think we often think of ourselves as a society beyond myth, that we're too modern for the kind of stories that ancient peoples told and the kind of beliefs of ancient peoples. But I think Christmas lays bare the fact that that's not true. And I wonder if when they dig us up in the future, they will say that we believed in Santa Claus as fervently as some believe in Jesus and God. The two different ways that these cultural stories are treated means the story of losing faith in both of them hits very differently. I lost my faith in Santa the way a lot of curious children do, by catching him in the act. Part of the storytelling in my house was that Santa would bring chocolates to put on the tree, and lo and behold, one Christmas Eve, who did I see putting Christmas chocolates on the tree but my own dear mother? I remember at the time it being confusing. I couldn't understand why all of the adults had lied to me about this, but also I remember that I had a sense that this was going to disappoint the adults around me. My not believing in Santa anymore was going to be a shame. It's not because of anything anyone said or any toxicity from any of the adults around me. That's not what I mean at all. But it's just this sense that I knew that the myth making needed someone to believe in it. It needed an innocent, someone naive to buy into the story, to make it magical, to make the magic of Christmas operational. And I was going to be confessing that that was no longer me. That was no longer the case. And for the few years after I stopped believing in Santa, something of the Christmas magic was really diminished. It became easier to wait to open presents. The anticipation was less and the moment-to-moment magic was less. It became a grey day in December like the one before and after it, although, you know, it was still a nice day. Then there was the Christmas when I was 12 and my grandma was in hospital, and that was sad. But I remember going into the ward and I was in a red dress, and I remember twirling round and the old ladies in the ward cooing over me, and one of them went, "Oh, she brightens up the ward." And now when I look back, I realise that that was my first experience of bringing the Christmas magic to someone else instead of being the recipient. For many of us, the moment when we start producing Christmas magic, when we start to become Santa Claus, that is when the magic of Christmas gets reborn for us. A few years after that, my youngest cousins were born, and there was so much childlike joy reintroduced to Christmas just by having a toddler, just by having someone there who didn't know that this was make-believe. The myth of Santa Claus started to make sense again once they came into the picture. But this way of recapturing magic, it's not always simple. Becoming the maker of Christmas, yes, can be wonderful and magical, but there's also so much pressure, so much expectation. There's a financial burden. The price tag on Christmas seems to go up year on year. The myth of Santa Claus requires the abundance of Santa Claus. It requires that we spend, or we manage to magically produce these presents from somewhere. And so it's no wonder that if this is our Christmas myth, Christmas can get quite stressful. At the same time, my experience of Christian Christmas was getting more magical as well. I was old enough to start going to midnight mass, and there's something about a warm room in the middle of the night, lit by candles and thrumming with choral music, that is just so moving and beautiful. I always loved the choral music most at church, and I still love carols now. I was entering stage 3 of faith, synthetic conventional faith, which is when you take the stories that you were passed down and you learn to understand them in abstract and metaphorical ways. You learn that they're a collection of stories that give moral lessons and are not necessarily all literal, although a lot of the stories were still literal to me, especially the ones specifically about Jesus. When I was confirmed in the Catholic faith, I chose the saint name Adela, whose feast day is Christmas Eve. But only 3 years later, I would lose my faith in God completely, and the meaning of Christmas shifted once again. When I lost my faith in God, I was 17, and a homophobic preacher came to our church and started talking about why we should oppose gay marriage. It was 2013, and gay marriage was going through Parliament, and I fundamentally thought that it should be allowed. And I was shocked to hear someone saying that it shouldn't, and trying to make Christian, love-based, holy arguments for why it shouldn't be allowed. It seemed to go against all of the teachings that I had been passed down, going to that church and being part of the diverse community of people that went there. And it made me start to question all of the authority that came from the pulpit. Fowler writes that the synthetic conventional stage of faith relies a lot on authority. And for me, hearing something come from the pulpit where I heard all of these stories that I knew to be wrong, knew to be morally reprehensible, that was the moment for me where the whole story fell apart. I kind of pulled on that thread of everything I've ever been taught from that pulpit, and the whole thing unravelled. And within about 3 or 4 weeks, I didn't believe in anything anymore. What followed was about 10 years of pretty staunch and angry atheism. I did dabble in some Christian and atheist spaces, Sunday Assembly, Greenbelt Festival, and I think what I was mostly trying to do was recapture the sense of community that I'd had in the church. I never kind of understood the idea of being culturally Christian until it happened to me. I still loved carols, I still went carol singing, and when I got married, I married a Christian. The kind of Christian who believes that Jesus was an excellent role model for how to treat people and was generous and others focused and all that good stuff. And I would call these years my kind of deconstruction years. I think a lot of us who've been through crisis know about the idea of deconstruction, when you unpack the beliefs that you were handed by your faith and you start to analyse them for yourself. And they might be in areas of faith, but they might be areas just of your life in general, things about authority and gender and all sorts of ideas like that. Then about 2 years ago, I watched a conversation between some ex-Mormons who I feel a lot of affinity to, and they were talking about the concept of reconstruction. They were talking about the idea of becoming an ex-Mormon. Basically what happens when people leave the Mormon church is that they tend to go through a phase of feeling very angry towards the religious situation that they were in. And this conversation was about respecting that phase and then going, okay, but what comes after that? Do you want to rebuild a sense of identity and spirituality after that? And I found this idea really interesting, and it made me start thinking, okay, well, what's next for me? Can I reconstruct? The 4th and 5th stages of faith are about developing a more reflective, mature, individual idea of a faith for yourself. It's where an individual takes the stories that they've been raised with and starts to question them and starts to learn about other faiths and compare between them and starts to develop a more universalist and open-minded understanding of the world and of spiritual ideas in general. We start to ask big questions, and eventually we become okay with not getting all of the answers that we might want. We become more okay with not knowing. We become less threatened by other people's religious beliefs and see them more as an opportunity to learn something that could develop our own faith and experience deeper. I wanted to reconstruct a sense of spirituality for myself because I saw how grounded and calm people with a strong spirituality were. And over time, I've come to believe that someone with a strong spirituality is basically someone who has a really good story, a really solid, grounded story of how the world works, that they can apply in lots of situations and that makes sense to them and explains to them who they are and why they're here and what their purpose is. It doesn't have to be there's a God who put me here and wants XYZ for me. It can be a lot less literal than that. It's December and we already have our first snowdrop. What is going on? Eventually I found a story that made sense to me. The story of this time of year for me is now about the solstice, about the point where the world is at its darkest, the days their shortest, the harvest has been pulled in, and the humans pull together to get through the winter. All around the world, across lots of different cultures, people take the darkest points of the year and they celebrate with lights and feasting. And to me, this is such a human story. A story of us recognising that winter is hard and cold and lots of us get depressed and that we need something to pull us through and keep us going. A story of people who love each other pulling together and celebrating and wanting to get together, of the importance of family or chosen family, and of the importance of spending time with the people we love while we can. This story is also connected with seasonal change. This is the time of year when the world loses its leaves, when things don't grow, and we hold hope that they will come back. This story not only connects me with my fellow humans, the ones that are here now and the ones who came before me, but with the earth that I live on. It connects me with my sense of responsibility to the people around me and to the planet I live on, but also to the knowledge that I'm just one of so many people that have ever existed, and that I will always matter most to the people that love me, rather than anything grand in the great scale of history. The story of the solstice is one like the story of Christmas, of resurrection. The earth is dead, the plants are dead, but they will come back. A light will enter the world and the plants will grow again. The sun is dark, the days are short, but the summer will come back, the sun will come back. And there are predictable patterns to the way things go, and there is hope. This Christmas I will gather with the people I love because I know I don't have forever with them, and we will gather in the heart of winter and we will fill the dark days with fairy lights and with merriment, just as humans have done for years and years before us, and just as humans will do for years and years ahead of us. This Christmas we will tell each other stories as humans have done for generations, as they will do for generations to come. One of those stories will be the Nativity, which has a lot to teach us about compassion and kindness and letting people in and not judging on appearances, and about doing what you can, even if it's not perfect. That innkeeper may have just had a barn available, but he did a damn sight better job than the other ones who just shut the door in Mary's face. This Christmas we can take ownership over our myths and stories. Stories will always be used to either connect or divide us, and I think we can choose whether the myths that we tell direct us towards community and connectedness and unity, or can lead us towards division. And there is something about the right story that can bring back a sense of magic and connectiveness to Christmas as well. So, Merry Christmas to you all, and a Happy New Year.